Right, friends. Welcome to PK Sir classes. This is CA Prasanna Kumar. So, now what we're gonna do is that we're gonna revise the chapter MBE. We'll try to solve as many questions as possible. So, I want you guys to have the study material with you. So, as you can see, this is the page number 2.7. We'll try to solve as many important questions as possible from this particular, chapter. We'll try to revise. To be very precise, we are trying to revise. So, you should have a basic idea of all the concepts of this particular chapter before you proceed with this particular video, because we're going to concentrate the questions, case scenarios and case studies of this particular chapter. That's what we're going to do. I've received many requests from students, especially for MBE chapter, that they wanted me to actually revise this particular chapter, in one and a half hour time. So what we're going to do is that we're going to try to revise this particular chapter as much possible, that much within the given limited amount of time. We'll try to solve as many questions as possible. So I hope this particular revision session will be really helpful for you guys, for those who are, preparing for your exams. Anyways, chalo, let's start with the first question without wasting any further time. So I'm gonna be pretty, we're gonna cover in a very good, what can I say? We're gonna maintain a good amount of speed. So I want you guys to have the study material with you, or if you have my material, you can have that as well. And anyways, so let's start with the session. Let's start with illustration 1 first. So Livewell Limited is a manufacturing company that produces a wide range of consumer products for home consumption. Among the popular products are its energy efficient and environment friendly LED lamps. The company has a quality control department that monitors the quality of the production, right? As per the recent cost of poor quality report, the current rejection rate for LED lamps is 5% of the unit's input. Okay. 5,000 units of the input go through the process each day. Each unit that is rejected results in 200 rupees lost to the company. The quality control department has proposed few changes to the inspection process that would enable early detection of defects. This would reduce the overall rejection rate from 5% to 3% of units input. The improved inspection process would cost the company 15,000 each day, right? Analyze the proposal and suggest if it would be beneficial for the company to implement it. After implementation, analyze the maximum rejection rate beyond which proposal ceases to be beneficial. That is the question. Now, since this is rapid revision, I cannot give you time to read the question. If you want to read the question again, here after each and every question, you can pause the video and then read the question, understand the question, have your own time, and then, play the video so that you'll be able to continue with the rest of the session. Is that clear? Right, chalo. So let's go on with the solution now. So first of all, what we have to do, we need to look into the cost benefit analysis of the proposal. Right now, what is the rejection that is happening? 5%. The input was 5,000 units, correct? 5,000 into 5%. So what's the rejection right now that's going on? 250 units. What is the expected rejection? It will get reduced to 3%, which means your new rejection will be 150 units, which is obviously input into rejection rate. Very simple. So which means from 250, your rejections are going to get reduced to 150, which means total savings will be how much? 100 units. So reduction in number of rejections will be 100 units. So what's gonna be your benefit? 100 into 200. Why 100 into 200? I hope you guys have read the question. Each unit that is rejected results in 200 rupees lost to the company. So which means when the number of rejected units is gonna get reduced by 100, then per unit you're gonna say what? 200, which means the total benefit is going to be 20,000. What is the cost of implementing the proposal? It is given in the question. I hope you have read the question, which is 15,000, which means the benefit that we're going to enjoy is 5,000. Pretty simple. Therefore, obviously, because the benefit is positive, the company should implement the proposal. There ends the matter. Right. Now, looking at the second part of the question, what is that? After implementation, analyze the maximum rejection rate beyond which the proposal ceases to be beneficial. So right now, what was the answer for first part of the question? We said it is beneficial because the net benefit is positive. Therefore, go for that proposal, implement it, right? Now he is asking you exactly the opposite question. When it will not be beneficial is what he is asking. Then only the proposal will cease to be beneficial, right? So which means what we'll do is that indirectly we need to calculate indifference point. Indifference point means what, sir? Indifference point means that particular point at which we're going to calculate the rejection rate as a percentage, such that at that particular rejection rate percentage, whether you go for implementing the proposal or you go for not implementing the proposal, both will give you equal benefit. So once you know the indifference point, above that, below that, you will have the answer, which means above a particular rejection rate, your answer will be different. Below that particular rejection rate, your answer will be different. Are you able to understand? Whenever there is a question like this, where initially he has asked you, should I go for proposal? And the answer is yes or no, whatever it is. Again, he is asking you an opposite question. Always find out indifference point. This is a universal rule, right? Anyways, now let's go with that. So calculation of maximum rejection rate beyond which the proposal ceases to be beneficial. Obviously, the question, whatever he has asked you in the question will be the heading. Whatever he has asked you in the question will be the heading. This is what he has asked you in the question. That is the heading, as simple as that, right? Now, so indifference point, as I told you, we're going to calculate that. So even if you don't know this, you can use your common sense and calculate. Now see here, the net benefit is 5,000. What do you mean by indifference point? Indifference point means at that particular point, whether you implement the proposal or you do not implement the proposal, your situation should be same. Your benefit should be same, which means the net benefit should be 0, correct? So when this net benefit is going to be 0, right? Cost of implementing the proposal you cannot change. That will be 15,000. But benefit can be changed. So the benefit also should be 15,000. Then 15,000 minus 15,000, it will be 0, correct? Benefit should be 15,000 means what? Here what you can change? 100 units into 200. The savings in rejection rate 200 cannot be changed. But the number of units, the reduction in number of rejections, that can be changed, right? So which means it should be 15,000 divided by 200, which means this should be 75, correct? So 75 reduction in number of rejections into 200 will give you 15,000, and 15,000 minus 15,000, it's going to be 0. Now, if this should be 75, what is that? Reduction in number of rejections. If this should be 75, which means this should be how much? 175, correct? 250 minus 175 will give you 75. So that's your answer. So 175 means how much should be this percentage? If you calculate this percentage, your answer is done. 500 into how much percentage will be 175. Then it's a matter, right? Like that also you can calculate. I have calculated in a different way. See here. Cost of implementing the proposal divided by savings per unit. Same logic only. So 15,000 divided by 200 per unit, as we have calculated 75 units, right? So, which means the expected rejection should be 175. That's what we have calculated over here. It should be what? 175. So if it is 175 means how much should be the percentage? 175 divided by 5,000 into 100, the percentage will be 3.5%. This is your indifference point. Pretty simple, right? Now, so if the rejection rate is less than or equals to 3.5%, the proposal is beneficial. That's why initially our rejection rate was 3%. Therefore, we said the proposal is beneficial. So go for the proposal. So less than 3.5%, it is beneficial. Equals to 3.5%, either this way or that way. You can implement the proposal or you need not implement the proposal. Both will be same for you because in both the cases your net benefit will be 0, right? That is indifference point. Greater than 3.5%, the proposal ceases to be beneficial. That's what he has asked. Maximum rejection rate means 3.5% should be your answer. You got this? Chalo, done. Now let's move on to the next question. Illustration 1 is done. We're gonna go for the second one. Yeah, this one. Now take this case scenario, buddies. Let's move on. Right guys, let's look into this question. Case scenario. JK Limited produces and sells a single product. Presently, the company is having its quality control system in a small way at an annual external failure and internal failure cost of 4,40,000 and 8,50,000 respectively. As the company is not able to ensure supply of good quality products up to the expectations of its customers and wants to manage competition to retain market share, considers an alternative quality control system. So what is that? It is expected that the implementation of the system annually will lead to prevention cost of 5,60,000 and appraisal cost of 70,000. The external and internal failure cost will reduce by 1 lakh and 4,10,000 respectively in the new system. This much it will reduce. So be careful with that. All other activities and costs will remain unchanged. So you are required to first one, examine the new quality control proposal and recommend the acceptance or otherwise of the proposal from both financial and non-financial perspectives, right? What is your advice to the company if the company wants to achieve zero defect through a continuous quality improvement program? Third, suggest a suitable quality control level at a minimum cost. You can pause the video and read the question one more time if you want. Let's get to the solution. Right, first what we'll do is that we'll do the cost benefit analysis of the proposal. So right now you don't have any prevention cost, you don't have any appraisal cost. You can easily look at that in the question. Only internal failure and external failure cost are there, which is 8,50,000 and 4,40,000. That's what he has given in the question, correct? 4,40,000 and 8,50,000. Only these two are there. So there is no prevention, there is no appraisal. Whereas when it comes to the new system, obviously you have prevention and appraisal. That is also given in the question. I've just copy pasted from the question. which will lead to a prevention cost of 5,60,000 and appraisal cost of 70. That's what I've written, 5,60,000 and 70. And he also told you that external failure will reduce by 1 lakh, internal failure will reduce by 4,10,000. Correct? Will reduce by. So existing cost minus 4,10,000 for internal failure, you get 4,40,000. Existing cost minus 1 lakh for external failure, you get 3,40,000. So this is your total cost of quality after the proposal, right? And this is before. You got the point? So obviously, if you can see based on numbers, based on financial perspective, right? Purely based on numbers, quantitative factors. From financial perspective, the new proposal shall not be accepted as it will lead to additional cost of 1,20,000 because here it is 14,10,000 and here it is 12,90,000. Obviously, you need to also consider non-financial aspects, right? So from financial perspective, yes, you should not be accepting this particular proposal. But however, from non-financial perspective, it should be accepted. Otherwise, both internal failure and external failure cost will affect customer satisfaction and company's profit negatively in the long run. Are you able to understand? So what do you mean by that? See, if you don't invest this much, that is the prevention appraisal cost, then what will happen? Internal failure and especially external failure will affect your goodwill. Why? Because external failure means eventually the defects or whatever the problem that is there in your product has come to your knowledge only because of the customer. Customer tells you that, okay, this is the problem that I've been facing. So every time a customer tells you that this is the problem that he has been facing, his customer satisfaction gets affected. Now, once his customer satisfaction gets affected, that affects your sales in the long run, which means your profit also gets affected in the long run. Are you able to understand? So therefore, that's the power of non-financial aspects. Okay. So if there is high internal failure and external failure cost, especially external failure cost, that will affect the customer satisfaction and that will affect the company's profit in the long run. That is the logic. So the more a company invests in prevention and appraisal cost, the less will be the internal failure and external failure cost they will have. Why? Because they are inversely proportional to each other. If you invest over here, this will get reduced. More here and this will get reduced. That's obvious, right? As a result, the product is of improved quality, and when this product reaches the customer, it enhances his experience and satisfaction. This will bring in more sales orders, and also the company will be in a position to charge what premium for improved quality. Obviously, once you improve quality, you will always be in a position to increase your selling price, justifying the increase in selling price. Why? Because you are providing top-notch quality. Now, that is the logic behind Toyota, right? Especially Toyota, if you can see Fortuner or Innova, they're very costly. Are you able to understand? Although Toyota is not a premium brand like BMW or Merck, but still they charge a very premium price only because of the quality assurance that they give. So whenever you are in a position to have very good quality, definitely you can charge what? Premium, which is higher selling price for the same. You got the point? I hope this is clear. Right, Nana? So let's move on. Now moving on to the next part of the question. What is the next one he has asked? What is your advice to the company if the company wants to achieve zero defect to a continuous quality improvement program? That's fine. And also the last one is suggest a suitable quality control at a minimum level cost, right? I mean, suitable quality control level at a minimum cost. Let's have a look into that as well. Let's get into that, guys. Now, see, we know that cost of good quality, okay, if it increases, then cost of poor quality will be reduced. Cost of good quality is nothing but conformance cost, that is prevention and appraisal cost. The more you invest in prevention and appraisal cost, the lesser will be internal failure and external failure cost, which we know. And it will lead to lower defects as well. So if a company wants to achieve zero defect level, then it has to incur maximum cost on the prevention and appraisal, right? Are you able to understand? Then only your internal failure and external failure cost will be zero. Eventually it will become zero. So there should be continuous improvement program to achieve this so-called zero defects by eliminating all forms of waste. I hope you know waste. It is there in LSI chapter, Lean System and Innovation. 7 different types of waste are there. If you have seen that, you'll have an understanding. Otherwise, just remember that all the waste should be eliminated. Thereby, you'll be able to achieve zero defects. Simple. Now, coming on to the third part of the question. What is that? Suggest a suitable quality control level at minimum cost. Now, here, this is a debatable point. First of all, let's try to understand what your ICA has given as an answer. It is believed that striving for zero defects through continuous improvement is not good from economic point of view of the company, and the argument is that there should be acceptable level of defects, which means what they are trying to say is that trying to achieve zero defects is not good from economic point of view of the company, which means from financial perspective point of view. The point at which total quality of the cost is minimum is referred as optimal cost of quality. Sir, what do you mean by that, sir? Let's try to understand this. Okay. You have already learned the concept, then there is no problem. Otherwise, yeah. Yeah. Say, try to understand. So this is what do we call cost of poor quality. So if you can see, if your cost of good quality, that is this one, which is prevention appraisal cost, if it is at its maximum, this is cost of good quality at its maximum, then cost of poor quality will be at its minimum, which means defects will be almost nil. But if you look at the total cost of quality, this is total cost of quality. Total cost of quality is also at its maximum. Here it is at its maximum, correct? So what they are trying to say is that trying to invest a lot into cost of good quality, that is prevention appraisal, is also not good. Why? Because your total cost of quality will be high, which means from economical point of view, it is not good. Why? Because you're incurring a lot of more quality cost. So rather he says that there should be acceptable level of defects, which means little bit of internal failure and external failure is accepted, such that if you can see there is an intersection point of cost of good quality and cost of poor quality. At this intersection point, your total cost of quality is at its minimum. This is total cost of quality and this is at its minimum, right? And this is referred as optimum cost of quality, which means having a little bit of defects is good, is what your answer is trying to say according to ICA. But according to me, it is wrong. Why? Because if you have this sort of quality level, in the sense high amount of money is invested in cost of good quality, and if your poor quality is almost nil, then what happens is over a period of time, your goodwill increases like anything, and as a result, you'll be able to charge more selling price, and that additional selling price benefit also will come. That benefit is not considered while calculating this optimal cost of quality. So that is a mistake that they have done. Even though here your cost of quality is high, if you can offset the benefit that you get in the form of additional number of sales, that is the quantity of sales that gets increased, plus additional selling price which gets increased because of having what? Absolutely zero defects. Those two benefits are not considered over here. So according to my logic, going for maximum cost of good quality and having almost zero defects is the best for the company. But anyway, we need to follow the answer that is being given by your ICAI. Okay. And the answer given by your ICA is this. So we're gonna write the same in our exam, as simple as that. Otherwise, we won't get any marks. I hope that's clear, right? So this will be your answer. Are you able to get me? I hope this is clear. Chalo, let's move on to the next one. Next question. Right, fellas. Right, guys. So let's move on to this one. H Limited manufactures three products. The material cost, selling price, and bottleneck resource details per unit are as follows. You've got product X, Y, and Z. Selling price is given. Material and other variable cost is given. Bottleneck resource time is given, which is nothing but limiting factor. Okay. Bottleneck factory cost for the period are 2,21,600. The bottleneck resources time available is 75,150 minutes per period. So you are required to first one. Company has adopted throughput accounting and products are ranked according to product return per minute. Okay, select the highest ranked product, calculate throughput accounting ratio and comment on it. That is the question. Okay, this is based on TA ratio. Are you able to get me? Right? So let's finish it off. First of all, let's calculate throughput contribution per minute. Now, this is as simple as calculation of contribution per limiting factor, which we have already seen in decision making chapter revision as well. Are you able to understand? Contribution per limiting factor means what? You see, that concept I already have taught you, so I'm not going to repeat it over here because it's rapid revision. Now, in the place of contribution, you'll be having throughput contribution. In the place of limiting factor, you have bottleneck, which is nothing but here minute. Okay. So which means indirectly we are calculating the same concept. Contribution per limiting factor is nothing but throughput contribution per minute. In the place of contribution, we're going to take throughput contribution, which is nothing but sales minus direct material cost. Okay. Presuming that only direct material cost is a variable cost. Are you able to understand that? There is a logic behind that. Why? Because you take a small time scale. You presume a small time scale when it comes to this particular theory of constraint chapter. So when your time scale is really small, the only cost that varies is direct material cost. Even labor will be a fixed cost. Therefore, basically the logic is sales minus variable cost only, but the only variable cost is direct material cost. Therefore, sales minus direct material cost is your throughput contribution. Anyways, now, so selling price, copy paste, variable cost, copy paste, throughput contribution you have got. Okay. Now you divide that with the limiting factor or bottleneck. That is bottleneck minutes per minute. I mean minutes per unit is given in the question. You divide them, you get your contribution per limiting factor or throughput contribution per minute. You give the ranking. Very simple. First rank is Y, second rank is X, and third rank is Z. Okay, this is done. And the next one that he has asked you in the question is throughput accounting ratio. Throughput accounting ratio, to put it very simple, it is inflow divided by outflow. Are you able to understand? Inflow per minute divided by outflow per minute. In this case, here minute is nothing but bottleneck. Are you able to understand? So throughput contribution per minute, already we have calculated 2.8, 3, 2.5. So copy paste that over here. Now outflow per minute we need to calculate. That is given in the question. Okay. 2,21,600 divided by total number of minutes is given. Just divide both of them. Even that is done. Are you able to understand? Now divide the inflow, which is this one is the inflow, divided by outflow, that is this one, and you got your TA ratio. Very simple. And give the ranking. It is done. So here you can see only Y has got TA ratio as 1.02. It means your inflow is greater than outflow. Inflow is 3 per minute. Outflow is 2.95 per minute. Therefore, always, obviously, it's common sense that your inflow should be greater than your outflow, right? Therefore, your TA ratio should be greater than 1. Then only it's feasible, it's manageable. So, only Y gives you positive profit. X and Z gives you what? Negative. That's what we have written here. Product Y yields positive profit, whereas X and Z yields loss. That's it. We're done with this question. Let's move on to the next one. Right, friends, let's move on to the next one. Now, this is a case scenario based on customer lifetime value. Okay. Customer lifetime value is a very simple concept where your customer lifetime value is nothing but present value of all the future cash flows that you are expecting to receive from a particular customer. So for next 5 years or for next 10 years, so much is the money that you're expecting to get from them. You discount it to the present day, and that's your customer lifetime value. So it's a pretty simple concept. Now let's do a problem on that. Okay. Now coming on to this one. Cineworld is a movie theater that is located in a town with many colleges and universities around it. The town has a substantial student population, most of whom are avid moviegoers. Right, business for Cineworld has been slow in the recent years due to advent of streaming websites that show the latest and popular movies online. However, the management of the Cineworld continues to feel students would still enjoy watching movies on big screen along with families and ambience that only a movie theater can offer. Accordingly, they have framed a plan to attract students by offering discounts on movie tickets. The average time a student spends at a college or university is 4 years, which is the average duration of any course. For a nominal one-time subscription fee, Cineworld plans to offer students discounts on movie tickets for a period of 4 years. By attracting more footfall, Cineworld targets to cross-sell its food and beverages and souvenirs. This would help it sustain a reasonable revenue each year. Cineworld would attract attention to the plan by initially offering free tickets, food and beverage, and gift vouchers. This one-time initial expense net of the one-time subscription fee collected would cost 5,000 per student. On subscription to the plan, the viewership and purchases of each student is expected to be as follows. You've got particulars years 1 and 2, years 3, 3 and 4. The money that is spent on movie tickets per year, 2,000. Okay, 3 and 4 is 1,500. Food and beverage 4,000 and 3,000. Spend on souvenirs and accessories 2,250 and 750. Right. Assumption: only 50% of the subscribers are expected to visit the theaters in years 3 and 4. Right. Across all years, only 75% of the subscribers who visit the theater are expected to buy food and beverage. Only 25% of the subscribers who visit are expected to buy souvenirs in year 1 and 2, and 10% of them in years 3 and 4. Present value factor is given for rupee 1 for 4 years at 10% is 3.169, which means this is cumulative discount rate for 4 years, right? And for 2 years, it is 1.735. So they themselves have given, which is 1 divided by 1.10 is equal to. Now that's for 4 years. For 2 years, it will be what? 1.735. Right. Calculate the customer lifetime value per subscriber for the above plan. That is the question. Okay. So you can pause the video and then read the question. Now let's go to the solution. Okay, so what is that? Customer lifetime value is nothing but net present value that the company derives from a customer over an entire lifetime. Okay, so here a lot of things you need to keep in mind. You got to take a judgment with respect to what? Duration of the relationship, whether it is 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or 10 years, whatever it is. And you need to consider customer loyalty while deciding the duration. Okay, estimated frequency of purchase, how many times he's gonna buy, and what are all the competitive products that you have got. All these things has to be taken into consideration before you calculate the customer lifetime value, which is nothing but net present value of the projected future cash flows from the customer, right? Chalo, anyways, now look at this particular question. It's pretty simple one. So what we're going to do is that we're going to have the following columns: particulars, revenue per annum that you get from a customer, discount rate, then you'll get the present value, and you need to multiply that with probability, because everybody is not going to come every single time. Okay, so first of all, how many people are coming to your theater? Out of them, how many of them are buying the food and beverages? Out of them, how many of them are buying souvenirs? Are you able to understand? Therefore, we need this probability column, because in the question only that has been given, correct? Here. So you need that probability column. And after that, what do we have? Net revenue. Pretty simple. Now let's start with the revenue from movie tickets. Year 1 to 2, revenue per annum is given in the question, that is 2000. Okay. Here it is given 2000. Right. And present value factor for first 2 years is 1.735. That is also given from the question. I've just copy pasted it. Right. Here it is given. Chalo. You multiply that, you get your present value, which is 3470. Now, this is revenue from movie tickets. So first 2 years, 100% of them will come. Whoever has subscribed, everybody will come to watch the movies. Therefore, the probability is 100%. So you multiply 3470 into 100%, you get 3470. There ends the matter. Years 3 to 4. Revenue is given in the question. 1500, copy paste from the question. And what about the discount rate? Very simple. All 4 years discount rate is given. First 2 years discount rate is given in the question itself. So 4 years discount rate minus first 2 years discount rate will give you the discount rate for third year and fourth year, which is 1.434. Pretty simple. You multiply with that, you get your present value, and the probability is only 50%. Only 50% of the subscribers are expected to visit the theaters in years 3 and 4. That's why we have multiplied that with 50% and you got your number. Right. Moving on to food and beverages. When it comes to the revenue, which is 4000, that is given in the question. It is 4000 over here. Years 1 and 2, 3 and 4, it is 3000, right? So 4000 and 3000. Copy paste from the question. Discount rate, already you know, we have discussed that over here, right? Next. Once you got the present value, now you need to multiply with the probability. Now coming on to the probability, here I've put 75% for the first 2 years. Why? Only 75% of the subscribers who visit the theater are expected to buy food and beverage. Therefore, I've multiplied that with 75%. 100 into 75%. You got it? Now, for years 3 and 4, how many people will come for the theater? Out of that, it is 75%. In years 3 and 4, the number of people who are coming is only 50%. In this 50%, it will be 75%. Therefore, 50 into 75%, you got 37.5. There ends the matter. Right? And you got the numbers. Now, next one is revenue from souvenirs and accessories. 2250, 750, copy paste from the question. These two discount rates we already know, right? And you got the present value. Now, coming on to the probability. Now, let's look at the question. Only 25% of the subscribers who visit are expected to buy souvenirs in the year 1 and 2. And in the years 3 and 4, it is only 10%, right? So, what is that? Who visit the theaters? Who visit the theaters, right? So, therefore, how many people are visiting the theaters? 100%. In that 25%, right? So 100 into 25%, you got 25%. Next, you have got only 50% in the years 3 and 4. In that, it is only 10%, which is given in the question. So 50 into 10%, which is 5%. Got the point? So as you can see here, 25% and then 10%. So therefore, first you get everybody 100%. They visit the theaters. Out of them, 25% will buy your souvenirs. And next, only 50% of the people are coming to the theaters in the years 3 and 4. In that, only 10%, right? Which is 5%. Okay, once you multiply, you get your numbers, and that's your total revenue. Okay, then you have got net cost of attracting students, which is 5000. Are you able to understand? That is given in the question. You can see it over here. The one-time initial expense net of one-time subscription fee collected would cost 5000 per student. Therefore, it is an outflow. Therefore, you need to reduce it from the total inflow. That is total revenue. You get your net revenue from the subscription plan. You got the point, which is 7394. So it's positive. Obviously, you'll be going ahead with this, right? Chalo, we are done with this particular question. Right, friends. Now let's solve this case scenario now. This is based on GSA. I think this time I'm expecting this case scenario, I mean, at least GSA to be covered. So let's see. Let's hope that it comes in the examination. Okay. So let's move on with this. Ready? Raya Healthcare Limited is a leading healthcare service provider in Mumbai. It has approximately 450 potential beds. It provides diagnostic and daycare specialty facilities. In diagnostic centers, they are using traditional devices for CT scan and MRI, which are not enough as per demand. So patients waited for more than weeks for CT and MRI scans. This problem can cause delay in diagnosing illness, waste of time and other resources, not just in radiology, but throughout the healthcare system. So Raya has planned to outsource CT scan and MRI services to Live Life, which has world-class international chain of diagnostic center. Live Life promised to provide radiologist report within 24 hours. However, finance manager of Raya doubt that it will not be a profitable arrangement. For the satisfaction of Raya, Live Life has entered into an agreement to provide services to Raya with no guarantee of receiving payment. The moment you see no guarantee of receiving payment, you need to understand that it is GSA, gain sharing arrangement. Okay. Raya agrees to the following conditions. Cost savings generated in the first year, the same will be retained by Live Life. Cost savings generated in second and third year will be shared between Raya and Live Life at a ratio of 30% and 70%. Cost savings generated in the fourth year will be passed on to Raya. Any cost savings generated by an idea proposed exclusively by Raya that does not require capital investment by Live Life will be immediately passed along to Raya. So discuss the arrangement between Raya and Live Life. So this is the key for you. No guarantee of receiving payment is nothing but GSA. So you can say that the arrangement is GSA, but we need to discuss that. So that is a question. You can pause the video and then you can read the question. Now straight away we'll get to the solution. Right, chalo. First of all, try to understand what is the basic concept of GSA. So what happens is that I've gave you a very easy to understand notes over here. So supplier performs his side of the contract with no guarantee of receiving payment. That is the reason I told you the moment you see the word no guarantee of receiving payment, immediately you can come to a conclusion that it is GSA. So supplier means in this question it is Live Life. So Live Life performs his side of the contract with no guarantee of receiving payment. Payment will be based on the benefit to the customer. Customer means what? Raya. So that's why here we are talking about benefit only. Based on benefit only, everything is, communicated over here. So payment will be based on the benefit to the customer. So basically from this arrangement, either supplier can be rewarded with large return or can walk away with nothing. So the risk is taken by Live Life. Raya is not going to take any sort of risk over here. Only Live Life bears the risk because Live Life is the supplier. That is the arrangement of GSA. So GSA seems to be a win-win situation for both supplier and customer since interest of both the parties are aligned with each other. Right? So this is the basic concept of GSA. Right? So you can ask me, so why would supplier take such a kind of risk? Because he wants business. So that's the basic logic over here. Because if you can see, finance manager of Raya doubt that it will not be a profitable arrangement, and if this continues then there will be no business for Live Life. Therefore Live Life comes out with some sort of an arrangement called GSA with no guarantee of receiving payment because he wants business and he is very confident that he can get some sort of benefit for both the parties out of this sort of an arrangement. So it comes out of the confidence. Are you able to understand? Right? Now another angle of GSA arrangement is that review and adjusting existing contract with the supplier for the benefit of both the parties. This is very important from your examination perspective as well. Okay, hereafter till here we have seen the concept of GSA and only the positive things that we have seen. Here we are looking at other angle. So what is that? What are all the precautions that you need to take before entering into GSA? Point number one, be specific. Both the parties need to provide relevant cost data to each other. So there should be transparency, right? There should not be any sort of secrecy. If there is secrecy, that hurts the confidence. Are you able to understand? So therefore, you got to be specific to the point and all the data both the parties should share. Raya should share the same with Live Life and Live Life should do the same with Raya as well. And have a predefined formula for sharing of benefits. Now here we are talking about, this is predefined, right? All the cost savings, 30%, 70%. And be clear with that. How much is the savings? How much is the sharing that you're going to do? Have a predefined formula so that there is no confusion in the future. Efforts from both the entities are required, not just supplier. Very, very, very important. Are you able to understand? Both the parties should involve and should work it out. Effort should be there from both the sides. If it fails, then everything will be borne by, the entire loss will be borne by the receiving guy, that the supplier in this case. Are you able to understand? Anyways, next, effort should be there from both the entities as required, not just the supplier. Very, very, very important. So in case if it doesn't work out and there is no payment for the supplier, in this case Live Life, still it's okay for them. Are you able to understand? But efforts must be there from both the sides. Poor drafting of clauses, inaccurate gain sharing arrangement formula can lead to failure of GSA. Very important. Keep this in mind. All these 4 points are very important. Now let's apply, so far what we have seen the concept of GSA. Now let's apply the concept of GSA to Raya Healthcare. Okay, first one. The agreement between Live Life and Raya has entered into is GSA. Obviously, we know that. Risk for supplier Live Life is that it could spend a fortune and walk away with nothing. That we know already. If benefits to Raya are substantial, then Live Life also will be rewarded. Supplier also will be rewarded. The gain or benefit from the GSA arrangement need not necessarily be financial. This is another important point. It can be financial and non-financial as well. There should be greater openness and transparency between Raya and Live Life. That we have seen here already. Both parties need to provide relevant data to each other. There should be transparency, right? GSA is a win-win situation for both Raya and Live Life. That also we have seen here in the concept itself. So once you know the concept, it's merely copy-paste of the points. Live Life is trying to save cost of Raya and Raya is trying to give world-class services. Are you able to understand? And of course, it's trying to give business to Live Life. So that's the thing. So if you look at the application of the GSA concept over here, it is nothing really unique. Once you know the concept, clearly, it's pretty simple. And this is the concept. Are you able to understand? Right, chalo. Anyways, we're done with this particular case scenario. Right, guys, let's continue with the next question. Now come to test your knowledge questions. We'll do the last question for current session and the remaining will continue in the next session. Okay. Now, coming on to the first one. CIMZ is a new banking company which is about to open its first branch in India. CIMZ believes that in order to win customers from the market, it needs to offer potential customers a new banking experience. Other banking companies are focusing on interest rates and bank charges, whereas CIMZ believes that quality and timely availability of service is an important factor to attract the customers, right? Explain how TQM would enable CIMZ to gain competitive advantage in the banking sector. That is the question. Now, to answer this question, first you should know the concepts of TQM. That's for sure. After that, only you'll be able to understand this particular solution. As I told you, this entire session is based on the presumption that you guys have read the concepts again. Are you able to understand? Right. Anyways, now let's have a look into this. How to use TQM to gain competitive advantage. So this is the concept which you should know before answering this particular small case scenario. First one, fine tuning of your existing process to ensure quality, right? Obviously TQM talks about quality, so that's obvious. The first sentence is obvious, right? Second one, employee training and rewarding based on achievement. Once you train the employee, automatically the defects will be reduced and the quality of the output will get improved. And once you start providing rewards based on achievement, automatically what will happen, their efficiency also will increase. That efficiency which gets increased because of the reward. Okay, because reward is something that always gives you that, it motivates you to work harder, to work efficiently, isn't it? So therefore, once you start providing rewards based on the achievement, automatically the efficiency increases and that will increase the quality, reduce the defects. And that, of course, once you increase the quality and the defects gets reduced, it helps you to gain competitive advantage. That's natural, right? Next, developing commitment towards quality. Okay, which means it should be like how you eat food. So quality also should come natural. So you should have that commitment towards quality. That kind of environment should be developed. Ensuring customer satisfaction. Obviously, once you have quality and once you give what the customer wants, automatically customer satisfaction will be ensured. So this is the concept first of all, right? Now let's see what CIMZ should do. It should implement the following through TQM. What are they? First one, you should provide training to staff, technical aspects and customer care side. So both the angles kind of training you should provide, which means technical side, the training should be provided and how to take care of the customer, how to talk to the customer, how to receive him. If at all you're not able to provide that sort of a service on the same day that the customer has asked you to provide service, how to actually make him understand. All these things will come under customer care. Technical aspects means, it's all about the other financial and accounting stuff. Anyways, so this sort of training you should provide. So this point is straight away from the concept. Correct? Next, more staff to solve customer complaints faster and reduce the length of the queue. That way, you will be able to increase the customer satisfaction, and that way you will be able to gain competitive advantage because your competitor is not doing the same. Next, increase working hours of the bank for better customer care, experience, right? So as a result, what will happen? Somebody whose office gets completed at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or 5 o'clock or something like that, he'll be able to reach your bank and he'll be able to get the services, right? So increase your working hours, right? Next, provide single point of contact, SPOC, provide online banking services. All these things will increase the customer service, customer satisfaction, and eventually that will help you gain competitive advantage. Right, guys? It's a pretty simple question. Nothing really drastic over here. You can just pause the video and have a look at this. You can revise it. Right. Anyways, let's move on to the last one. That is the conclusion. So in the long run, if CIMZ continues to follow TQM, it will lead to higher profit and competitive advantage because eventually you'll be able to provide better quality of services. You'll be able to satisfy the customer, and eventually therefore customer will recommend your particular banking services to all the other office friends and stuff like that. That will increase your services, sale of your services, and eventually more profit, so more business and competitive advantage as well. TQM should be seen as an investment rather than cost. That is also very important because today's investment on TQM will provide you tomorrow benefits, right? That's also really important. Anyways, so that's it, guys. You got this? Okay, you can just pause the video and then you can revise this. So that's it. With this, we are done with this particular session. In the next session, we'll try to finish off the remaining questions. Right, guys? Thank you so much. Bye-bye.